It begins with a notification that lands like a whisper in a quiet room, Harry's name flashing where it hasn't belonged in a long time. William expects a line of courtesy, a cautious olive branch. Catherine expects nothing at all. But the message isn't small. It's layered, emotional, and strangely precise, like it was written to trigger something. And then Lewis sees it. One glance, one reaction, and suddenly it isn't about brothers anymore. It's about the next generation. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. In this fictional account, the message doesn't arrive through the usual palace channels. It slips in through an unexpected route, bypassing the buffers that normally keep emotions at a distance. That alone makes the air change. Because when something avoids the system, it usually means someone wanted it to hit raw, without preparation, without mediation, without the softening language that turns conflict into misunderstanding. William recognizes that immediately, and for a brief moment he just stares at the name, feeling something he hates admitting, hope mixed with dread. William debates whether to open it immediately. His hand hovers like the decision itself could alter the past. He thinks of the brother he grew up with. He thinks of everything that fractured. He thinks of how many times the palace has survived by keeping certain conversations unspoken. And then he thinks of the future, the life he's building now, and how easily one message can pull old storms back into the room. That's the cruel truth of family conflict inside royalty history. Doesn't stay behind you. It waits for an opening. Catherine feels it before he says a word. Her instincts flare with that quiet certainty she's learned to trust. This doesn't feel like reconciliation. She doesn't even need to read it to sense the weight behind it. She reads William's posture, the tension in the pause, the slight shift in the room's temperature. Catherine has learned that in royal life, some messages arrive with peace, and some arrive disguised as peace. The disguised ones are always the most dangerous. Louis notices the tension before anyone speaks, because children sense shifts faster than adults want to believe. In this story, Louis doesn't understand every detail of adult history, but he understands tone. He understands when a room holds its breath. He understands when his parents suddenly become careful. And in that split second before William even opens the message, Lewis becomes the silent indicator that something has changed. His face reads the room the way the palace reads optics instantly, instinctively. William opens it, and the first lines don't feel casual. They feel constructed, layered, emotional in a way that's almost too precise, like someone chose each sentence for impact rather than honesty. Catherine's fear tightens into clarity as she watches William's expression shift. The message isn't just, "How are you?" It carries intention. It carries memory. It carries the kind of carefully placed tenderness that can soften defenses right before it asks for something. Then the foreshadowing drops quietly but heavily. The message references something only family would know. Not a public fact, not a headline. A small private detail, the kind that isn't meant for negotiation. That's what makes William's stomach tighten. Because private details in a message like this aren't just memories, they're keys. They open doors that were deliberately kept closed. And if Harry is using a private key, it means the message was designed to unlock something William has been guarding, either his emotions, his boundaries, or his sense of control. Louis sees the screen at the wrong moment. One glance, one reaction, and it's not childish curiosity, it's recognition. Recognition of the name, the tension, the way his parents' energy changes. His reaction is small, but it lands like a warning bell because it confirms what Catherine has feared. The conflict has already reached the children, not through headlines, but through atmosphere, through the way adults get quiet, through the way they try to smile while their eyes are elsewhere. The cliffhanger builds in the background as William connects another dot. The timing aligns with an upcoming royal moment, a public appearance, a calendar pressure point, something that would make any message feel heavier because it's arriving right when the family needs stability the most. William realizes this isn't just communication, it's timing. And timing in royal life is rarely innocent. The room feels suddenly smaller. William feels the old past pressing forward. Catherine feels the protective instinct rise like steel. And Louis stands there, watching, absorbing, learning something without being told, that some names can change the whole house in an instant. And as William reads the first lines, the palace problem becomes personal, because the message doesn't aim at William first, it aims at Louis. Adults think children are distracted. In royal life, children are the sharpest mirrors. Louis doesn't understand every headline, but he understands tone, who gets quiet, who gets tight, who forces a smile. William and Catherine try to protect him from the fractures, but the truth leaks through the smallest moments. And when Harry's message appears, Louis reacts in a way that makes Catherine's heart drop, because it's not confusion, it's recognition. In this fictional account, Louis has overheard careful conversations more than anyone admits, not because anyone sat him down to explain, but because royal life is full of half-sentences spoken too softly and pauses that carry meaning. Children don't need the details to feel the weight. Louis has felt it in the way certain names make the room turn careful, the way his parents' voices change when they think no one is listening, the way adults say later when they mean never. So when Harry's name flashes, Louis doesn't ask, "Who is that?" He watches. He reads the air. He knows that a message isn't just a message when the whole room suddenly holds its breath. Catherine's protective instinct rises immediately, sharp, almost physical. It isn't anger first, it's shielding. Because once the children are touched by the conflict, everything becomes more dangerous. Catherine has spent years learning how to hold steady under pressure, how to smile through storms, how to protect her family's privacy when the world demands access. But this moment isn't the world. It's inside, and inside hurts differently, because you can't dismiss it as noise. You have to respond to it. William struggles with guilt in a way he can't hide. This is my brother, but it touches my son. That is the line running through him. Lie. Key, a wire. He has carried the fracture with Harry as an adult problem, a painful adult history. But now the fracture has stepped into the children's space, and that feels like failure even if it isn't. William can sense Catherine's fear, and he can sense Louis's awareness, and he realizes he's standing between two responsibilities that both feel absolute. Protect the future of the crown, protect the future of the crown, and protect the innocence of his child. Then foreshadow strikes with an unexpected weight. Louis has a memory connected to Harry that no one expected to resurface so sharply. A small moment, an old warmth, a familiar association that still lives in him even if he can't fully explain it. And that's what makes his reaction so unsettling, because recognition means the past isn't gone, it's just been waiting. Louis' face doesn't show confusion, it shows a quiet awareness that makes Catherine's heart drop, as if the child has been holding a question for longer than anyone realized. The emotional punch lands when Louis looks at them with that unguarded seriousness only children can have. A child's reaction feels like judgment without words, not because he's accusing them, but because he's reflecting something back at them. The tension they think they've hidden, the fracture they think they've contained, the name they think they've made small by not speaking it. Louis makes it real simply by seeing it. And then he asks one question that forces honesty. Not a complicated question, not a political question. A simple one, the kind that slices through adult strategies. Is he still family? The room goes quiet. William feels the weight of every careful explanation he has ever avoided. Catherine feels the pressure of choosing the right words without poisoning the child's heart. In that moment, they understand the message has already achieved something before it's even fully read. It has pulled the children into the narrative. And once Louis asks it, William and Catherine realize the message isn't just a text, it's a test of what they've told their children. The message doesn't arrive like an apology. It arrives like a carefully packaged emotion, soft enough to seem sincere, sharp enough to cut. Harry writes about family, about love, about what Louis deserves to know. But there's a strange weight behind the words, like someone is trying to place a responsibility on a child who never asked for any of this. William feels anger rise, Catherine feels fear, and Louis simply freezes. In this fictional telling, the first line that stings is the line framed as concern for Louis's future. It's written as if it's protective, but it lands like pressure, because it implies that William and Catherine are gatekeepers of truth, that they're withholding something a child deserves. The subtext is clear, even when the text is gentle. I should have access. I should be able to speak directly. I should not be filtered. And that's exactly why William reads it as boundary crossing, while Catherine reads it as manipulation risk. It isn't a request. It's an attempt to reframe the parents as obstacles. Louis deserves truth becomes a loaded weapon in the space of seconds. Truth, in that sentence, isn't clarity. It's leverage. It forces a reaction. If they ignore it, they look cruel. If they respond emotionally, they look unstable. If they answer carefully, they risk being accused of spinning. William's anger rises not because he hates the sentiment, but because he recognizes the tactic. Wrap pressure in care, so resistance looks like wrongdoing. Then comes the foreshadow that turns discomfort into dread. Harry hints at things left unsaid that could surface, not a direct threat, but a suggestion that silence has consequences, that the past can be reopened if the present isn't handled the way he wants. And Louis, watching the adults' faces change, freezes not from fear of Harry's words, but from the way his parents absorbed them. Children don't fear sentences as much as they fear what sentences do to the people they trust. The cliffhanger lands when the message references an object, a photo, a phrase tied to Louis, something specific enough to feel intimate. It's the kind of detail that bypasses logic and goes straight to the heart. It makes Louis feel seen by someone he barely understands, and it makes Catherine feel cold with alarm, because details like that shouldn't be used in this way. They shouldn't be tools. They shouldn't be hooks. And as William's grip tightens around the phone, the family realizes the real danger has already arrived. Not the words alone, the Pridis alone, but the way those words were designed to travel through the most sensitive place of all the child. But the real danger isn't what Harry wrote, it's how quickly the palace realizes it exists. In the palace, information travels faster than footsteps. One private message becomes a public risk in minutes because everyone understands the same rule. The next generation is the future brand. Advisors whisper about optics. Handlers discuss family narrative. William wants privacy. Catherine wants protection. And somewhere in the background, someone asks the question no one wants asked. What if Louis's reaction becomes the story? In this fictional account, the shift is immediate. The message hasn't even had time to settle into the family's emotional space before the palace machinery starts humming around it. Not loudly, efficiently. Like a system that has been trained to wake up the second anything threatens the image of stability. Competing advisors begin arguing in that careful, coded way palace people argue. Keep it quiet versus address it decisively. One side insists silence prevents escalate. Ion. The other insists silence invites speculation. And speculation, in royal life, is a wildfire that doesn't need proof to burn. Catherine draws a line that doesn't sound dramatic, but hits like steel. The children are not bargaining chips. She doesn't care what narrative needs smoothing, what headline needs avoiding, what unity needs staging. Because the moment Louis is dragged into adult conflict, the monarchy stops being an institution and becomes a threat inside their own home. Catherine's fear is controlled, but it's real. She knows how quickly the world turns children into symbols. And she refuses to let Louis become a symbol people fight over. William, meanwhile, feels pressure building from multiple directions. He senses the institution tugging on his parenting, because the palace doesn't see a child first. It sees the future brand, the future reign, the next generation the public will attach their hope to. And that's why the pressure comes disguised as advice. Look united before the upcoming event. Don't feed the story. Don't react. Don't give anyone a hook. William wants privacy, but he knows privacy is fragile when everyone inside the machine is trained to treat secrets like liabilities. Foreshadow arrives with a phrase that instantly changes the temperature. Do not respond yet. An aide's instruction, delivered as if it's common sense. Wait. Let the system assess. Let the palace craft the safest path. But do not respond yet isn't only about strategy. It's about control. It's about deciding who speaks first, and therefore who defines reality. William hears it and feels something twist inside him because the message touched his son, and now he's being told to wait as if fatherhood is an optics issue. Then the cliffhanger drops, whispered with the calm urgency that only palace insiders can manage. Someone hints the message may already be screenshotted. Hat's single possibility turns the situation from private tension into public vulnerability, because screenshots don't care about context, they don't care about nuance, they travel without permission, and once they travel, someone else gets to write the story. Whether William and Catherine like it or not, and once screenshots are suspected, the crisis stops being emotional and becomes operational. William and Catherine don't reveal Louis's reaction for attention. They do it because silence creates a vacuum, and vacuums get filled by the loudest narrative. If the palace spins it, it becomes propaganda. If outsiders spin it, it becomes scandal. So they choose the most dangerous option, controlled truth. They frame Louis's reaction not as drama, but as a boundary, because when a child is pulled into adult conflict, the rules must change. In this fictional telling, their decision isn't impulsive, it's protective. They choose a limited, careful disclosure to protect Louis from rumors, because rumors are crueler than truth. Rumors can invent reactions, rewrite emotions, and turn a child into a headline. So they offer something small, precise, and grounded enough to stop others from filling the silence with poison, but not enough to hand the world their child's heart. William frames it as safeguarding the future reign's stability, because stability is the language the institution understands. He refuses to let the monarchy look capturable by emotion or manipulated by private pressure. Catherine frames it as safeguarding their children's emotional safety, because that is the language she will never compromise on. She makes it clear without pleading that their children will not be used as a bridge, a weapon, or a bargaining tool. The reveal triggers anger from multiple sides, exactly as foreshadowed. Some accuse them of making a private moment public, others accuse them of not saying enough. Some push for a stronger statement, others demand silence. And beneath all of it sits the same truth. When you speak, you lose control of how your words will be used. But when you don't speak, you lose control of what others will invent. That is the trap, and they choose the path that protects Louis first, even if it costs them comfort. The emotional punch lands in the line that becomes the center of their decision. We won't let him be used. It isn't shouted, it isn't performative. It's a boundary disguised as a sentence, a declaration that the rules have changed because a child was touched by adult conflict. And once the rules change, the palace can't pretend this is just family drama anymore. It becomes a question of what the institution will allow itself to do. Then comes the final cliffhanger of the section. The reveal forces Harry to respond again, because once William and Catherine set a boundary publicly, silence becomes its own statements. And in royal wars, statements invite counter-statements. The moment they speak, the pressure doesn't ease, it shifts. And the moment they speak, Harry's camp doesn't calm down, it escalates. What the public sees is a single message. What the palace fears is a sequence. William's team realizes the text wasn't random. It was timed, shaped, and aimed. Not to heal the past, but to influence the future. The words about Louis were the hook. The real aim was access, direct connection, public sympathy, and a pathway back into relevance through the most sensitive door of all, the children. In this fictional account, William doesn't let emotion steer the next step. He lets pattern. The moment the first shock passes, he turns to the people trained to see intent behind language, his advisors, his private team, the quiet professionals who live in the shadows of royal decisions. They don't ask, is this sincere? They ask, what do? It do? And the answer starts forming like a map. This message was built to force movement. A pattern emerges fast. Timing aligns with key royal calendar moments, the kind of moments where the family must look united, the kind of moments where public attention is already primed. That's what makes the message feel less like a personal reach out and more like a strategic push. William sees the trap immediately. If he ignores it, the silence can be framed as cruelty. If he responds, he opens a door. If he responds emotionally, he fuels a narrative. And if he responds clinically, he looks cold. Every option creates a headline. That's what the palace fears most, a move that forces you to lose, No matter how carefully you play, advisors begin identifying pressure language designed to force a response. Words that sound caring but carry weight. Phrases like, Louis deserves, and family should, and you know what's right. These aren't just sentiments, they are levers. They push responsibility onto William and Catherine while positioning Harry as the concerned figure. They're crafted to look gentle while making refusal look immoral. That's why William's anger is different this time. It isn't the anger of old wounds. It's the anger of recognizing a tactic aimed at his child. Catherine's instincts sharpen into something colder. She suspects the message was written to be leaked if ignored, because the wording is too polished, too quotable, too easily cropped into a screenshot that makes Harry look compassionate and William look distant. Catherine understands that in modern royal conflict, the most dangerous messages aren't the ones that seek reconciliation. They're the ones that can survive as headlines. Messages built to travel. Messages built to punish silence. Foreshadow slips in through a detail nobody wants to say out loud at first. A third party may be advising Harry on phrasing. Not proof, not certainty. But the fingerprints are there in the structure, the pacing, the emotional stacking, the way it pulls the reader from nostalgia into obligation. It reads like something shaped for impact, shaped for strategy, shaped for maximum pressure with minimum overt threat. William's team doesn't need to know who wrote it to know it was written with intent. The emotional punch lands hardest when William realizes the core truth. His son is being turned into leverage. Louis isn't being spoken to in the message, not really. He's being used as a doorway, a pressure point, a way to bypass hardened adult boundaries by aiming straight at the most sensitive thing in the room: parental instinct. William feels something snap into place. This is no longer brother versus brother. This is protection versus intrusion. And then comes the cliffhanger that changes the threat level completely. A private detail ape, pairs that only insiders would know. Not a public fact, not a generic memory, but a specific reference, a phrase, an object, a moment connected to Louis that shouldn't exist outside the family's inner circle. The room goes still. William's advisors stop theorizing and start calculating, because private details don't appear by magic. They appear because someone spoke, or someone listened, or someone had access they were never meant to have. And when that private detail surfaces, William's suspicion becomes something colder because it suggests a breach. The most terrifying part isn't Harry's tone. It's the detail he shouldn't have. A name, a memory, a moment involving Louis that was never meant to leave the family circle. That means someone talked or someone listened. William and Catherine feel the floor shift beneath them, because now it isn't just brother versus brother. It's inside versus inside, and once a child becomes the target of leaks, the palace stops feeling like home. In this fictional account, William doesn't react with a speech. He reacts with procedure. Quiet, controlled, razor-sharp, he orders a discreet check who had access to that detail, who heard it, who could have repeated it without realizing the danger. Not a public investigation, not a dramatic purge, a silent audit of trust, the kind that doesn't need announcements because everyone inside the system can feel it happening. Names get mentally circled, schedules get remembered, conversations get replayed in the mind with new meaning. The palace becomes a place where even harmless small talk feels suspicious. Catherine's response is even more instinctive. She tightens the children's circle immediately. Fewer people, fewer openings, fewer casual moments where information can slip out under the disguise of normal family life. She doesn't make a scene, she makes a boundary, because Catherine understands something the palace rarely admits out loud. Privacy isn't protected by locks, it's protected by limitation. And limitation, in royal life, feels like an accusation to the people who suddenly find themselves kept at a distance. The palace begins containment protocol behavior almost on its own. Calls become shorter, messages become more formal. People who used to be relaxed become careful. Advisors start speaking in phrases designed to reduce liability, not clarify truth. The machine does what it always does when it senses exposure. It starts closing doors, tightening information flow, rewriting the tone before anyone can rewrite it for them. It isn't just defense, it's reflex. Foreshadow sharpens when a familiar age name appears repeatedly near sensitive moments, not proof, but presence. A person who always seems to be near the edge of family space when something delicate is discussed. Catherine notices it first, because Catherine has learned to track patterns the way others track headlines. And the emotional punch lands hard. She feels, for a moment, like she failed to protect the one thing she swore she would never gamble with her children's privacy. Not because she was careless, but because the palace isn't built for innocence, it's built for access. Then Louis reacts again, this time with fear, not confusion. It's small, but it changes everything. A child's fear isn't political, it's pure. And when Catherine sees it, her clarity becomes cold. When William sees it, his restraint turns into resolve, because now the threat isn't theoretical. It's already inside the home, shaping the way their child feels. And Louis's second reaction forces William and Catherine into a decision that can't be undone because protection now requires confrontation. There comes a point where you stop managing optics and start protecting your child. William's voice stays steady, but his message is steel. Louis is not a channel. Catherine is colder than anyone expects, because fear has turned into clarity. They confront the pressure directly: Harry's access, the palace's silence, the invisible hands shaping the narrative. And in that moment, the monarchy's future stops being ceremonial and becomes brutally human. In this fictional telling, William frames it as protecting the future reign, not punishing Harry, because that framing removes the palace's favorite escape route: family drama. He makes it clear that involving Louis, directly or indirectly, is a boundary violation, not a misunderstanding, not an accident, a line crossed. He refuses to let his son become a bridge someone can walk across whenever it's convenient. He refuses to let the next generation be used as proof of innocence or proof of grievance. Catherine refuses emotional manipulation with a calm that feels sharper than anger. She doesn't argue about feelings. She demands boundaries, no indirect pressure, no coded messages, no private details used as hooks, no narratives built through children. Her clarity is terrifying to the palace, because clarity can't be softened with PR. It forces yes or no decisions, and yes or no decisions create winners and losers. The palace reacts predictably: denial, deflection, counterattack, each escalating tension. Denial suggests nothing improper happened. Deflection suggests everyone is overreacting. Counterattack suggests William and Catherine are being cruel by blocking family. Each reaction reveals more than any statement could, because the more the palace tries to reframe the boundary as drama, the more it confirms the boundary was necessary. The theme becomes unavoidable. Reactions reveal truth more than statements do. Foreshadow turns into certainty. This will leak, stops being a warning, and becomes a countdown. Because once boundaries are declared, someone always tries to punish them by controlling the story. Someone will leak a partial version. Someone will leak the wrong version. Someone will leak just enough to make the parents look harsh. William and Catherine know that, and they also know the alternative is worse. Silence that allows the pressure to continue quietly. Then the cliffhanger hits the moment that proves control is already slipping. A second copy of the message, or a screenshot, surfaces. Not publicly yet, but present enough to make the room feel dangerous. It means someone prepared for this confrontation. It means someone wanted insurance. It means the conflict was never only between brothers. It was between the family and the machine around them. And as the palace scrambles to contain what's already escaping, the final twist appears because Louis' reaction wasn't the problem. It was the proof. Monarchies don't collapse in explosions. They collapse in small moments that expose big truths. Louis' reaction forces the palace to face the uncomfortable reality. The next generation already feels the fracture. William becomes the boundary. Catherine becomes the shield. Harry becomes the wild card. And the chilling question remains: was this message a one-time misstep, or the first move in a new battle for influence over the future? In this fictional account, the palace tries to treat the situation like it always does: manage the optics, soften the language, Reduce the story to something that can be filed away. But Louis's reaction won't file. It won't obey the scripts, because a child's response is the one kind of truth you can't completely rewrite without looking cruel. Adults can be labeled emotional. Adults can be accused of agendas. But when a child shows fear, recognition, or confusion in the face of a family fracture, the institution is forced to face what it hates admitting. The cracks are no longer theoretical. They're inherited. That's where the legacy dilemma tightens like a noose. Peace at any cost sounds noble, until you realize the cost is paid in silence, boundaries blurred, and children absorbing tension they never asked to carry. Truth with consequences sounds dangerous, until you realize consequences are already happening quietly inside the home, inside the next generation, inside the very future the monarchy claims to protect. William and Catherine are forced to weigh what the institution wants against what the family needs. And for the first time, the balance shifts toward the human. Because you can't demand sacrifice from a child and call it stability. The institution needs stability. The human beings inside it need safety, trust, and dignity. Both demand sacrifice, but they demand different kinds. The palace will always choose the sacrifice that protects the machine. William and Catherine in this story choose the sacrifice that protects the child, even if it invites conflict, even if it draws lines that make unity harder to perform. That choice changes everything. It turns a private message into a boundary moment that redefines what the next reign will tolerate. The emotional outcomes narrow into three hard paths. Reconciliation, if respect returns and boundaries are honored without manipulation. Fracture, if pressure continues and the conflict escalates into permanent distance. Or cold coexistence, the royal specialty, where everyone remains in place, smiles when required, speaks carefully, and privately accepts that the family has become an arrangement rather than a bond. None of these outcomes are clean. None of them are painless. But all of them lead to the same truth. The fracture is now visible to the people who will inherit it. And because the palace fears visibility more than it fears conflict, it begins to restructure. Access gets tighter. Advisors become fewer but more powerful. The family narrative becomes more controlled, as if controlling the story can control the reality. Conversations are routed through gatekeepers. Sensitive moments are managed by protocol. The goal becomes simple: prevent the next generation from becoming the center of another headline. Yet, that very restructuring confirms what William feared. The machine reacts to vulnerability by tightening its grip, not by healing what caused the vulnerability. The ending sting lingers like a shadow that won't leave. The breach detail suggests the story isn't over. If a private detail reached outside hands once, it can happen again. If screenshots exist, they can surface. If someone inside helped the message land with precision, someone inside may help the next one land even harder. The palace doesn't just fear Harry's words anymore. It fears the fact that the words move the way they did, through channels that suggest access, awareness, and intent. And then the final twist settles in with chilling clarity. Louis's reaction becomes the line the palace can't cross again, not because the palace suddenly grows a conscience, but because the next generation is the one asset no institution can afford to look like it is exploiting. The moment a child is visibly pulled into adult conflict, the monarchy risks becoming something the public can't defend. William understands that. Catherine understands that. And somewhere deep inside the palace, even the most disciplined strategists understand it too. The future can eat stiff, the future is frightened. And as the palace returns to silence, one truth remains louder than ever: some messages don't end a chapter, they recruit the next one. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.